Unreal Engine supports various 2D image file types, and they each have various benefits. In this module, we'll learn about what different types of files you can use and how you may want to create them to be optimized for your project. 2D image files can be imported as .bmp, float, PCX, PNG, PSD, TGA, JPEG, EXR, DDS, or HDR files. Many artists typically use TGA, JPEG, and PNG files. Naturally, there are pros and cons to using any of these file formats. When you import an image file, the image gets compressed into a format that can be read by Unreal Engine. Therefore, you may want to avoid using JPEG images as these are already very compressed. TGA and PNG files have less compression and can have an alpha channel, but they can be larger files. Generally speaking, to achieve the highest level of visual quality, you should try to avoid as much compression as possible. Compression in textures used in materials is extremely apparent. Let's import a few textures that we could use in a material. Here are some textures for some wood: base color, roughness, and normal. To import these, I'll just drag them straight into the content browser. You may notice a message in the bottom right corner of your screen that indicates the normal texture was imported with compression settings for normals rather than base color. Any image file that we import can be saved with different compression settings. Double-click the normal texture to open the details for this asset. You can see here under compression settings that this file has been set to normal map, and sRGB has been unchecked. sRGB is the most widely used color space for visible color on digital displays, so this should always be checked for diffuse and base color textures. For textures that are used as data, such as roughness or normals, this should be unchecked. Let's open the roughness texture, set the compression to grayscale, and disable sRGB, since this will be used as data rather than color. Whatever file formats you choose for textures in your 3D modeling program, those formats ultimately get compressed and imported into Unreal Engine when you use the Datasmith file type. That's why the Datasmith assets folder that I have for this project contains JPEG, PNG, and TGA files. Regardless of whatever formats you choose, all image files must be a power of 2 resolution, square, or rectangle, meaning the size should be 64 by 64, 128, 256, 512, or so on. This is the case for 2 reasons. For one, all power of 2 textures, even if they are bigger, make much better use of available memory when they are being rendered on screen. Power of 2 resolution is also important for Unreal Engine to create mipmaps for textures. Mipmaps are pre-calculated, optimized sequences of images, each of which is 1/4 of the resolution of the previous image. Mipmaps can only be created on import for image files that are power of 2 square or rectangle. When a texture is used on screen in the viewport or during gameplay, the size of texture that is used is dependent on how large that texture needs to be on screen. For example, we don't need to render a 4K texture at full resolution if it's only taking up like 20 pixels on screen. Let's open the wood base color texture. Notice at the top under details, we have 12 mipmaps for this texture. In MipGen settings, under level of detail, we can see that these were created with default settings, but we could create them with sharpening or blurring if we needed to. If your textures do not use mipmaps, you may see a warning indicating that your system does not have enough memory to render everything at the default resolution. You could notice blurry textures, decreased performance, or extremely poor aliasing, especially around edges with high contrast. Mipmaps are extremely important. Next, we'll create materials to apply to our 3D geometry using textures that we have imported into our Unreal Engine project.